everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again to Queen Ahmadiyyah TV, More Than Meets the Third Eye. So as you're in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to click the notification bell and click the word all so that you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. Also, don't forget that there are memberships available and you can join the channel under different memberships and you get perks with each one. Okay, so let's get ready to get into this. Now, today, I'm going to be discussing metacognition. Okay, that's what we're going to be talking about, metacognition. Let's see who's in here. Hello, Black Pearl Inc. Juju's in the house, Mr. Hotel. All right, Claudette, I see you, beloved. Okay, so shout out, hey, Carl Kilcrease, Charlisa. Shout out to everyone in the chat. I see you, Gigi Cakes, Lillian, March Baby, Hundia. Okay, shout out to everyone in the chat and everyone tuned into the Queen. So before we get into it, hey, Turkey Descended Dale. Before we get into it, Miss Hotel said, I got my membership, child. I am excited for this. Well, thank you, beloved. I hope everyone is excited because I am too, to bring you all this information. Hey, Deronda, Curly Girl, Danielle. Okay, Kenyetta's in the house. All right, so let's get ready to get into it. Now, first things first, how many of you, one's in the chats, okay, Salaikum Salam, Danielle, beloved. Hey, Pete Ratik. So how many of you, one's in the chat, if you know what metacognition is? If you know what metacognition is, one's in the chat. Hey, Michael M, Mommy, Desmond in the house, Claudette, Khalid, Herleen. All right, shout out to my moderators in the chat putting in work. Okay. So with that all being said, Mr. Hotel, we know you know. Sit down somewhere, Mr. Hotel. What do you not know? Okay, Desmond said the audio's messing up. Is anyone having issues with the audio? Anyone having issues with the audio? Okay, I see a lot of people putting twos. So likely a lot of people haven't heard of metacognition. So that's what we're going to be talking about. I have a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, Carl Kilcrease said, no, Sister Queen, never heard of it. Okay. All right. So let's get into it. Now, before I get started, can everyone hear me? Put ones in the chat if you can hear me. Danielle says it's choppy. Juju says it's fine. Okay, you have to blame it on ScrewTube. Sounds fine. Okay, listen. If anyone's having issues hearing, please try to reset your device. Not reset it, but you know what I'm saying. Go out and come back in. Okay. So let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen so you all can see this PowerPoint. Likes up, everyone. Don't forget to like and share. Very important that we like and share. Thank you, Wavy, though. Okay, here we go. Now, as we talk about metacognition, for those of you who've never heard of it, you're going to learn how this can be beneficial to you as it pertains to learning things, because metacognition is basically thinking about thinking. In other words, thinking about how you view things, how you think about things, how you come to conclusions, all right, how you view things and how you assess situations. Basically, it's about understanding the way that you think and also questioning the way other people think. So let's get into it. What is metacognition? Metacognition refers to a range of processes and strategies used to assess and monitor knowledge. It includes the feeling of knowing that accompanies problem solving, the ability to distinguish ideas about which we are confident from those which we doubt. Researcher Jean Piaget, that's the way you pronounce it, Jean Piaget, he did a study on children's intelligence. Now, in this study, he included a method of inquiry in which he asked the children to explain how they knew an answer to a problem. Being able to explain your reasoning is a component of metacognition. So basically, this is something we learned in school. Remember when you would do a math problem when you were in elementary and you had to not only give the answer, but you had to show your work? Well, that's how you basically figure out things, right? And the way you retain information or receive information has a lot to do with your own thinking processes. Some people make things a lot more difficult for themselves than they actually have to be because they overthink things. Some people don't think things through. Some people put little thought and effort into the things that they do. So people who don't think about things clearly and just make rash decisions are people who just, do things without planning or strategizing. They often have bad consequences. Okay. Now, metacognition is derived from a Greek word meta, which means beyond, and the Latin word cognoscere, meaning getting to know. Okay. That refers to one's ability to be aware of what they are thinking about and to choose a helpful thought process. So let me give you an example. Sometimes people, most of us, we think based on the way that we were raised. We think based on the beliefs that we have and the life experiences that we have gone through. For example, there was a story that I was just looking over days ago about a man who was, insecure in his relationship, didn't trust his mates, because he had dealt in the past with people who lied, used him for money, weren't sincere. And so all of that played into the way he perceived other people when he started new relationships, carrying old baggage into the present. And so that type of thinking is, of course, low vibrational. But if you would just take the time to think about how you're thinking, maybe you could change some of those things. If you understand what I'm saying. You know how a lot of us are pessimistic. We doubt ourselves. We worry. Well, worry and doubt, those are stressors. So if before you sit there and just worry about something, you ask yourself, what can I do to fix this situation? What can I do to remedy it? What solution could I possibly come up with? And then you start actively thinking about how to get to the point where this is no longer an issue for you, rather than sitting there pondering on it and just being pessimistic and just, draining yourself of energy and just thinking that this is just what it is. I can't do anything about it, because that is not allowing you to live up to your full potential. Okay. That's not allowing you to thinking outside of the box. Absolutely. Terry Hinton. Okay. Mr. Hotel said, yes, I took things from my parents and mixed them with my own beliefs. Absolutely. And like I said, a lot of times our life experiences mold and shape the way that we think. And sometimes we get stuck in a rut and things become stagnant because we don't know how to escape the thinking patterns that we have engaged in that are negative. So that's why you need metacognition, so that you can better assess situations and start thinking about your own thought patterns, thinking about the way you in fact view and perceive things, so you can work on it and you can hopefully lift your vibrations and start to, move into a more positive frame of thinking. Now, the distinction between cognition and metacognition is this. Cognition is all mental processes and abilities in which people engage on a daily basis, such as memory, learning, problem solving, evaluation, reasoning, and decision making. Metacognition, which is thinking about thinking, well, it allows us to complete a given task through planning, monitoring, evaluating, comprehending, making a person more aware of his or her cognitive processes. Now, people are likely to spend more time exploring things if it's interesting. For example, when I was in school, I never liked math. The only thing I ever liked about math that I recall was geometry. I liked geometry because it dealt with shapes and things like that. And now, as I became an adult, that's what made it easier for me to learn about sacred geometry, okay, and how that is so important in our lives. But as far as math, I never really cared for it, and so that's not one of my strong suits. And part of using metacognition is to know your strengths and weaknesses. English was always my strong suit. I always had a way with words. I always loved to be able to talk and express myself, to write poetry and short stories and things like that. I'm very creative with words. Math was not something that I was interested in because to me, math was boring. It's just a bunch of dumb numbers, is what it seemed to me. But in geometry, there were shapes. Isosceles triangles, you know what I'm saying? Hexagons, octagons, and things like that. So that made it more interesting because I'm a visual learner. And that's another thing we'll talk about later on. Now, they look longer, some people that is, look longer at paintings that are interesting. They spend more time trying to understand written materials that are interesting and work harder at trying to solve problems that are interesting. Emotions are associated with distinct patterns of appraisal. According to research by Paul Sylvia, the emotion that we refer to as interest is a product of the interaction of two types of appraisals. First, when an event or stimulus occurs, a person makes a novelty appraisal. This appraisal assesses whether the event is new, complex, unexpected, mysterious, or in some other way it creates disequilibrium in the existing schema. Now, second, the person makes an appraisal of his or her coping potential with regard to the stimulus. This refers to an assessment of whether the person has the ability to understand the new stimulus. When a stimulus is appraised as both novel or complex and also understandable, the interest is high. And so let's talk about that. For example, now an example of that would be learning Greek. Now, if you were not interested in learning Greek, or if you looked at it and it just looked so difficult and so complex, it looked like something you wouldn't be able to comprehend, and maybe you just don't know how you would be able to understand it ever, well, you would likely not have an interest in it. And people, of course, are more like to learn things that interest them. And so with that all being said, you have to determine, how do you learn? What is the best way for you to learn and retain information? Some people like to see things, which I do because I have a photographic memory. So I like to view things. Some people like audio. They like to hear things. So these are the people that will get audio books so they can listen to it, right? Because they may not like to read. But I'll tell you something. People who like to read, well, I'm not going to say their intelligence level is higher than those who don't. Well, yes, I am going to say that. It's absolutely true. People who like to read tend to be more intellectual than people who don't like to read, because reading, not only is it fundamental as we were taught as children, but reading actually broadens our horizons. Okay? It broadens our horizons. And here's the thing. A lot of us get caught up, into texting, and we get caught up into typing on the computer. But I always tell my students, when you're taking notes in class, don't take the notes on your laptop. Don't type it. Write it down. Do it the old-fashioned way. Write it down, because you're more likely to retain the information if you just write it down. When you're typing, you're really not thinking about what you're writing. You're not thinking about what you're typing. You're just typing it on there. You go back and look at it later. But if you're writing it down, you're actually absorbing the information as you write it. And so that's very good for someone who's studying. Another thing is, I was taught by my mother as a child, that there's a difference between learning and basically memorizing. Okay? Learning is different than memorizing, because what some people do is they will memorize something long enough. Okay, and I see this with students sometimes. So what they'll do is they'll read something, right? Because they know a test is coming up, perhaps. And they'll read over the materials and they'll take notes and all of that. And they'll look at the chapters. And then as soon as that test is over, that information is going out the window. Because what they did was they didn't learn the information. So if you didn't learn it, that means you didn't retain it. What they did was they memorized it. And often when you memorize things for a test, it leaves you shortly thereafter. Okay, so it's very important to learn things as opposed to memorizing them. And that's another thing where metacognition comes in. Nessie says, I try to tell these young kids, but they don't understand. Well, a lot of young people don't. They absolutely don't. Now, in addition to assessing one's ability to understand something, people use metacognition to review various strategies for approaching a problem. This is done in order to choose the one that is most likely to result in a solution. People monitor their comprehension of the material that they have read and select strategies for increasing their comprehension. An example is someone may say, I need to reread this section. I need to underline and take notes to focus my attention on new information. I need to talk about this with someone in order to understand it better. Right. Sometimes we just need to talk to someone, because I'm going to tell you what I find. What I find that happens to me sometimes is I may know something or think I know something, and I may think I have it all figured out. But then if I share that information and have a discussion with someone, then even hearing myself say it out loud, sometimes that makes me have a different view of the situation. It gives me a better comprehension of it, and then helps me to come to a conclusion, to find a solution. Sometimes just talking to someone else. I mean, you're listening to what they have to say about the situation, or just listening to yourself and thinking about how you think about the subject and thinking about how you have been viewing it. This all can help. Now, metacognition develops in parallel with other cognitive capacities. As adolescents develop their ability to attend to more variables in their approach to problems, they simultaneously increase their capacity to take an executive posture in relation to cognitive tasks. They can detect uncertainty and introduce strategies to reduce it. They can learn study techniques that will enhance their ability to organize and recall information. That's absolutely true. And this isn't just for students. This is for adults as well. Because sometimes in life, we just can't get certain things because we don't comprehend it. The person that's giving us the information may not be relaying it to us in such a way that we understand fully or comprehend it. That's why when I tell you about things, I like to use visuals like PowerPoints, for example. I like to use PowerPoints so that you can see the information. I like to add pictures to the PowerPoints so that it makes it more interesting. It makes it more engaging. Now, just imagine if I had these words on these slides with no pictures, and I'm just sitting here reading it to you. Well, you would hear what I'm saying, but you may not be as interested. And so, like I said, a lot of this stuff is visual, and it captures the interest of the viewers or the people that are trying to retain the information. Because we want to, Lana L said, I swear it worked. Thank you, beloved. Gives new meaning to lay down on it. Absolutely, baby boy. Okay, this is very true for visual learners, says Drag Lily. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, when I'm trying to teach information, I always try to do it in a way that people can fully comprehend it. Okay, because some of the things I talk about are complex, and I try to talk in a way, use words that people understand or that make it more simple, if you get what I'm saying. Okay, so metacognition appears to be a natural component of cognitive development. However, just like the first level cognitive capacities, it is constructed in a social context. Now, interactions between adolescents and adults or peers may nurture and stimulate metacognition by helping teens to identify sources of information, look to talk about and recognize the differences between feelings of certainty and uncertainty in their knowledge, and devise effective ways for increasing their strategies for feelings of knowing. So it can help you to be more certain about things, to be sure about things. A lot of times people just blurt out stuff. They don't think about what they're saying. Let me give you a prime example. Okay, so a prime example of someone who obviously doesn't think about their thinking, who obviously doesn't use metacognition, that would be Andrew Tate. Now, as we know from our earlier broadcast on the other channel, Andrew Tate has come under fire. He's been accused of some very seedy things, And his own words are now, they may put the nail in his coffin. His own words, things that he said, because he wasn't thinking about his own thinking. You see, one thing that I always do, and I know you all notice this, is I choose my words very carefully. And the reason I do so is because I always am thinking about my thinking. I'm always using metacognition. And so it keeps me from just blurting out and saying something crazy, or just blurting out and giving the wrong information. And if I do give misinformation, which I don't usually, but we're not perfect, right? But if I were to give misinformation, I don't mind being corrected. I would prefer to be corrected than to continuously give out wrong information. But some people don't like to be corrected. Some people don't like constructive criticism. And these are all problematic things, because these type of people don't think about their thinking. And they don't think before they speak, which Mr. Andrew Tate clearly didn't do. He did not think before he spoke, because those words are going to come back to haunt him, I guarantee you, when he walks into that courtroom. And that's just what it is. Why is it important to develop metacognitive skills? If you've ever thought, wow, I really didn't think that through, you're engaging in a simple form of metacognition. You're analyzing your actions and trying to understand why you acted the way that you did. That's thinking about your thinking, if you didn't know that. Now, most of us believe that we are very self-aware. However, the reality is most of us aren't. Okay? A lot of people are not self-aware, and they think that they absolutely are, but they're not. And often you can't tell these people anything different, because they think they know it all. And so when you're trying to teach them something or give them some advice or constructive criticism, they're not going to be receptive to that. They don't want to hear what you've got to say. They've already got their mind made up. So they're not going to be, so willing to accept your correction. Now, a study conducted by Cornell University and Green Peak Partners found that leaders who lacked self-awareness were less successful and underperformed those who could objectively assess their own strengths and weaknesses. So here's the thing. If you're going to be a leader in any capacity, you need to be self-aware. You need to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. You need to know what they are. And you need not be have a problem with getting constructive criticism when someone's actually trying to help you. At the end of the day, another one of my weaknesses is, other than math, I would say, is and I'm not even gonna say math is a weakness, because I always made A's and B's in math. I just don't like it. That's all I'm saying. In college, I graduated with a very high GPA. With my doctorate, I had a 3.75. With my master's, I had a 4.0. And my bachelor's, I had a 4.0. But no, I'm sorry. With my master's, I had a 3.75. With my PhD, I had a 4.0. Now, the reason I had that 3.75 with my master's is because I had to take 2 very tedious math classes. In fact, I had to take 3. I had to take budgeting and financing. I had to take quantitative methods, as well as statistics. And quantitative methods is supposed to be taken after statistics, but because my schedule got messed up, I ended up taking them both at the same time, when actually statistics is a prerequisite to quantitative methods. So I had to learn them both simultaneously. So it was very confusing. And I made B's in those classes. I passed with B's, but that's not one of my strong suits, like I said, because everything else I breezed through with A's. Now, another thing is, when we are trying to be in a role as a leader, we have to be able to understand the areas that we're not good in. One of my areas, another area I'm not good in, is time management. Okay, time management is something that I'm just not the best at. And that should be obvious to all of you. Sorry, I keep clicking on the wrong thing. That should be obvious to some of you. Charlize said, I don't like math myself. Okay. So Sexy One says sexy brain power. Thank you, beloved. Time management, that's just not one of my strong points. I don't care what time I say I'm going to do something, how early I start, somehow, some way, I usually end up being just a little late. Okay? Unless I know that I have a severe consequence coming, then I'm not going to be late. You see, then I'm not going to be late. If they say, okay, if you get to work late one more time, you're going to be fired. Well, I'm not going to get to work late. But it has to be that severe for me to really focus on my time management. Okay. Lillian X at Our Queen is brilliant. Thank you, beloved. That's just an Agima Dada Dyer. I hope I said your name right, beloved. Said English you hate. Well, see, English was always my strong suit. I always loved words. I always loved putting words together and all of that. So that is what also allows me to enjoy research and to love to learn, because I like to learn new things. Metacognition is the process of analyzing how you approach the problem and the mindset that you take into it. This isn't the same as having a positive attitude, but it is a realistic assessment of how you think about an issue. Now, metacognition is a skill that can be developed and isn't innate from birth. It has been linked to the term growth mindset. Growth mindset requires the learner to recognize that they can change and develop. Metacognition doesn't have to be a drawn-out process. It can be as simple as asking yourself 2 or 3 questions before approaching a task. How many of you talk to yourself? How many people talk to themselves? One's in the chat if you ever talk to yourself. I talk to myself all the time. I ask myself questions. I answer those same questions that I ask myself. When I'm watching TV, I talk to myself. I mean, that's just something that I often do. Okay, so a lot of people say you talk to yourselves, right? And you should. And you should ask yourself questions. See, if we stop to ask ourselves certain questions, that would prohibit us from getting involved in certain predicaments that are not to our benefits. Okay? If we would just stop and pause and think and ask ourselves, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to say this? What's going to happen if I just blurt this out? How is this person going to feel? Am I going to regret it later? You should ask yourself these types of questions, because this will definitely help you to avoid certain situations. I always talk to myself at work and at home, says Cherokee Descendant. Absolutely. Now, metacognition is a skill that can be developed and isn't innate from birth. Okay, I read that already. You may already be doing it subconsciously, right? But genuine long-term improvements come from being intentionally objective and open to self-critique. If you're not willing to take a look at yourself and self-reflect and ask yourself what you could do to make things better, if you're not willing to listen to the advice of others whom you know have your best interest in mind, and they're just trying to tell you something that you could possibly change just to make you a little bit better, well, those things are to your detriment if you don't want to listen to that. Okay, because one thing that we should always know, and a wise man told me this years ago, there's always room for improvement. No matter how good things are, they can always be better. No matter how good you're doing things, you could always do it a little bit better. And so with that all being said, there's always more knowledge available. There's always more things we can learn. And there's always things that we can change that will help positively impact our situations. Metacognitive practices help students become aware of their strengths and weaknesses as learners, writers, readers, test takers, group members, etc. A key element is recognizing the limit of one's own knowledge or ability, and then figuring out how to expand that knowledge or extend the ability. Those who know their strengths and weaknesses in these areas will be more likely to actively monitor their learning strategies and resources and assess their readiness for particular tasks and performances. This is all very true. You have to know what your strengths are, because you can make them even better. You have to know what your weaknesses are and have to be able to accept those things, that those are things you need to work on. Now, the absence of metacognition connects to the research by Dunning, Johnson, Erlinger, and Kruger on why people fail to recognize their own incompetence. They found that people tend to be blissfully unaware of their incompetence, lacking insight about deficiencies in their intellectual and social skills. Some people just think that they know it all. You can't tell them anything. They don't even realize how unaware they are. A prime example would be people that are members of a cult. You see, people who join a cult, they don't even realize in the beginning that they're in a cult. They've been brainwashed. They've not thought about their own thinking. What they've done is allowed someone else to dictate to them what and how to think. And this is what cult leaders do. And they're very good at doing this. That's how they get the cognitive dissonance from their followers. And they get these people that are completely brainwashed. These people do not realize how unaware they are. They think that you're unaware when you call it out or bring it to their attention. They don't want to hear the critique. They don't want to listen to it. And at the end of the day, they don't even realize that they lack in social skills, critical thinking skills, and sometimes, sadly, even common sense. Now, they identified this pattern across domains from test taking, writing grammatically, thinking logically, to recognizing humor, to hunters' knowledge about firearms, and medical lab technicians' knowledge about medical terminology and problem-solving skills. In short, if people lack the skills to produce correct answers, they are also cursed with an inability to know when their answers or even anyone else's answers are right or wrong. That goes back to the cult mentality. People that are involved in cults are people that just blindly follow other people that don't seem to think for themselves. Well, they're not good at problem solving, and they're not able to realize that they don't have the answers. And so that prohibits them from realizing that the people they're following sometimes don't have answers themselves. And that sometimes they're being fed misinformation. Sometimes they're being purposely led in the wrong direction. Sometimes they're getting lies mixed with truth to confuse them, as the Bible speaks of. But they don't understand this and they can't comprehend it because they don't use cognition and they don't have the ability, as I said, to know that that they're unaware, that they're not maximizing their potential, their thinking potential, that is. Now, research suggests that increased metacognitive abilities to learn specific and correct skills, how to recognize them, and how to practice them is needed in many contexts. This is all very true. This just isn't for students. This is for adults. As we make our ways through life and we try to better ourselves, we try to raise our levels of consciousness, we try to become more positive and to have better positive outcomes. When we start trying to manifest things and visualize things, and we start trying to change our thought process, well, metacognition can help you with all of that. Okay? Queen is called almost like being in a clique. Yes, it is. It is almost like being in a clique, beloved. Absolutely. That's a good question. Yes, it absolutely is. Because when people are in a clique, they tend to go by the rules that they've set for themselves. And anyone trying to tell them anything outside of that, well, they don't want to hear it. And so, yes, absolutely. It's like being in a clique. And it's like if one person gets upset with somebody, then everybody in the clique is upset with that person. It's just like with the cult. If somebody speaks out against the cult leader, well, then the cult followers get upset with that person. And then they'll start to defend the person, their cult leader, that is, by spewing insults or trying to discredit the people that are speaking out against them. Absolutely. A clique is basically the same thing. Just a cult is much more intense, and it includes brainwashing. Now, cliques don't tend to have brainwashing. It's just a bunch of people getting together to push and spew the same narrative. Cults, that entails coercion, persuasion, manipulation, and brainwashing. Okay. And then they hope to get cognitive dissonance instilled in all of their followers. Now, metacognition is broken down into three components. Metacognitive knowledge, which involves a learning process or learning processes and your beliefs about how you learn and how you think others learn. The task of learning and how you process information and the strategies you develop and when you will use them. Metacognitive experience. Now, which is your internal response to learning. Okay, your feelings and emotions serve as a feedback system to help you understand your progress and expectations and your comprehension and connection of new information to the old, among other things. Metacognitive strategies. Well, that's what you design to monitor your progress related to your learning and the task at hand. It is a mechanism for controlling your thinking, activities, and to ensure that you're meeting your goals. So basically, when you do things, you should plan things out. You should have like a, have a method for how you want to carry out a situation. How you want to achieve a certain goal. Like some people say, someone said a few years ago, they said they're going to be a millionaire by the end of the year. Well, you could say that, but that's not going to manifest no matter how long you focus on it, unless you're putting in the work, unless you're thinking positive thoughts, unless you're visualizing yourself becoming this person, and as you're also doing the actions, putting forth the work and effort that will get you there. It's not just going to fall in your lap. And so you have to be actively making a plan and a strategy to accomplish this goal. And that has to do with the way you think. Some people will never be able to, be the full person that they're supposed to be, that the Most High sent them here to be, because they will not change their thinking. Some people are just stuck in the way that they've always been, and they don't see anything wrong with it, sadly. And so when you try to tell them something to encourage or motivate them to do something different, they're not going to listen to that. And so they'll likely stay stuck, stagnant in the same place that they've always been. And then they wonder why they're not moving forward. Well, it's because they can't change their thinking. Negative thought patterns are such a hindrance. Okay. Procrastination will absolutely destroy your dreams. And so you have to get out of negative thought frames, negative thought patterns. Metacognition is considered a critical component of successful learning. It involves self-regulation and self-reflection of strengths, weaknesses, and the types of strategies you create. It is a necessary foundation in culturally intelligent leadership because it underlines how you think through a problem or situation, strategies you create to address the situation or the problem. Knowledge of factual information and basic skills provides a foundation for developing metacognition. Metacognition enables leaders to master information and solve problems more easily. Now, when a leader has mastered the basic skills needed for intercultural interactions, they can actively engage in the interaction because they don't have to pay attention to the other dynamics and demands of the situation. Culturally intelligent leaders are able to practice metacognition, and they are not afraid to use it in their everyday. Let me tell you something. This is all true. When I was a child, our mother always told us, my mother always told us the philosophy of when in Rome, do as the Romans. Has anybody ever heard that before? When in Rome, do as the Romans. Like, you don't have to change who you are. You don't have to be fake. But when you're trying to understand people, it's best to talk to them on their level. It's best to relay information to them in words to which they can understand it. If you understand what I'm saying, like, you wouldn't go to the hood and try to tell somebody or teach somebody something, and you're talking in, these scientific terms that they may not be able to relate to. You always want to be able to, exactly, you have to adjust, exactly. So you want to be able to speak to people in their language, basically, okay? So for those who lack basic intercultural skills, it is more difficult for them to engage in the interaction. They are more occupied with finding the right information, the right skills, and the right facts that are needed to solve the problem. In such situations, these types of leaders spend little time developing their metacognitive skills, and the result is likely an inefficient solution to a problem. Developing a laundry list or checklist of do's and don'ts will not assist leaders in improving their cultural intelligence. That's just not going to do it. You can't sit here and say, well, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to do this. No, you have to really focus on understanding not only the way you yourself think, but the way other people think. Because once you start to understand the way certain people think, then you can understand how better to relay the message to them as their leader. And some people are leaders, but they're not managers. And some people are managers, but they're not leaders. And some people like to use those terms simultaneously, but they're two different things. Because every manager is not a leader, and every leader is not a manager. Okay? With that all being said, a leader should be able to also follow. They should be able to take constructive criticism. They should also, though, be able to delegate things and to teach and inform. But in order to do that effectively, you have to understand the way your audience, the way the people that you're working with, you have to understand the way they think. Because if you know how a person thinks, then you can say to yourself, okay, so this is why they don't get what I'm saying. Okay, so this is why they're not able to comprehend this. So let me just bring it to them this way. See, you can't speak to everybody collectively the same. Some people will retain the information the way you give it, but there's some people that think, differently. I'm not going to say they're slow, but people think at different rates, and some people think outside of the box. Some people are trapped in the box in their thinking. And so you have to understand how people are thinking so you can better relay messages to them and give them information so that they can comprehend it. Because that's how you solve the problem. That's how you fix the issue when you're working together as a team anyway. So when we take the time to reflect and focus on our thinking, we can often prevent mistakes. We can make more rational, informed, and logical decisions. Those who just react out of impulse without thinking things through usually suffer the consequences, like Mr. Andrew Tate. He didn't think it through. He just said things, when he was on those podcasts, he blurted things out. He didn't think about the consequences. He didn't think about how it sounded. And now, looking back on it, I'm sure he wishes he hadn't said some of those things, because now it all looks real bad, especially with what he's been accused of. It looks really bad. And that's why you should always think before you speak. Okay, now ask yourself questions. Think of multiple ways of approaching a situation. Don't overthink, but rather determine how to solve problems quickly and efficiently. Think about the life experiences that have led you to view things a certain way. If you're not where you want to be in life, for example, ask yourself, what is it that you're doing or not doing that is keeping you stagnant? It's likely the way you think. And if you pause for just a moment and think about how you're thinking, you can just turn things around. Now, there's two different types of mindset. There's a fixed mindset and there's a growth mindset. The fixed mindset, well, that's a person with a type of mindset that puts forth very little effort. They'll copy other people's talking points, for example. They'll steal other people's ideas because they can't come up with any of their own. They're not original. They're not authentic. And they don't want to put in the work. And they don't want to put in the time to think about coming up with these ideas. They don't want to put in the time to think about researching for themselves and finding the facts and stuff themselves. They'd rather listen to someone who they know has the information and then just go and regurgitate whatever they said. These are fixed mindset people. Now, they steal other people's ideas, or they'll do just enough to make it look as though they're actually doing a lot. They got to make it look like they're doing something to make it believable. They avoid challenges and they hate negative criticism, even when it's beneficial to them. These are the people that if you ask them a question, they don't want to answer it because they rather just deflect. Okay? They don't want to answer anything that you ask them about something negative about them, that is. They don't want to answer when they have a fixed mindset. They'd rather, throw insults. They'd rather just, crack jokes, talk about somebody else or bring up somebody else. For example, when I was talking on my live a few days ago and I brought up a certain person, and then this person gets on the live and says, well, what about this person? You're friends with this person. Well, see, one thing has nothing to do with the other. But see, that's what people do when they have a fixed mindset. When you have a fixed mindset, you're not going to be able to just stand up, and defend yourself against criticism. So rather than do that, rather than prove your point, or rather than speak in defense of yourself, rather than challenge the accusations against you, you'll just crack jokes and spew insults, like I said. Now, they avoid challenges and hate negative criticism, even when it's beneficial to them. But the growth mindset, let's talk about it. These people feel that hard work and effort allow them to master situations and achieve positive outcomes. They're determined to overcome obstacles and they refuse to give up. They embrace adversity and challenges and embrace adversity and challenges and strategize on how to accomplish their goals regardless. See, they're not going to let anything stop them. That's mindset. See, a growth mindset, that type of person knows that you can accomplish your goals if you work hard, if you stay focused, if you're optimistic rather than pessimistic, if you think positively instead of negatively, if you put in the work and put forth the effort. You can come up with all types of ideas. You can actually, make a job that you hate into something that you actually enjoy. It all depends on you. If you can find something good about that job, other than just getting a check every week, right? Then maybe it won't seem like such hard work. This is what a growth mindset person does. A growth mindset person knows that there's always room for improvement, that you can always grow and be better as a person. We're never going to be perfect. And that's why we should absolutely always be trying to evolve into a better version of ourselves. And this comes along with self-reflection. If you can't take a look in the mirror and look at yourself and see what's wrong, and I don't mean your physical appearance, but I mean with your spiritual, right? With your spiritual health, your mental health. If you can't look at yourself and think about the things that you have done in the past, didn't get you anywhere, that caused you problems, if you can think about how those things hindered you, and then you can see how, okay, that didn't work for me before, so I'm not going to keep doing things. I got to figure something out. And then you have to start changing your process of thinking. Now, they embrace adversity and challenges and strategize on how to accomplish their goals regardless. They learn from constructive criticism rather than deflecting and gaslighting. The people with a fixed mindset seldom live up to their full potential. That's another thing. You hinder yourself. You hurt yourself when you cannot accept constructive criticism and can't even, in fact, criticize yourself. These are the problems that narcissists have. Narcissists don't like to be corrected. They don't want to hear what anyone has to say if it's not something positive. And they often get caught in a rut because of it. Now, the people with a fixed mindset seldom live up to their full potential, while the people with a growth mindset learn how to maximize their potential. That's what they do. They learn how to maximize their potential. And that's what we all need to be doing. We need to be getting rid of fixed mindsets, pessimistic thoughts, negative frames, patterns of thinking. We need to be moving into higher levels of consciousness. We need to becoming more spiritually aware. We need to be trying to be more willing to do the research. Listen, a lot of times when people, con us, run a game on us and things like that, and we feel like we were used, that's because we didn't put forth the effort. We ignored the red flags. We didn't ask ourselves questions like, does this make any sense? This sounds like a lie. Maybe I need to do a little research. Maybe I need to investigate it. No, some of us are too lazy to do that. We'll just sit there and listen to whatever someone tells us. I'm going to tell you like this. This is one thing that I can honestly say. I never trust anyone's research but my own. I don't trust anyone's research but my own. Someone can send me a whole thesis, whatever you can send me and say, this is what it is. Well, I'm going to research it. I'm going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And then I'm going to do even more research because I don't trust anyone's research but my own. Even scholars make mistakes, myself included. Like I said, no one's perfect. But at the end of the day, I like to do my own research so that I know that I have actual receipts. I don't go by what someone just says. I go by what I can prove. And I look for the information so that I can back up the things that I say. And that's what we all should be doing. Very true. The thought or energy is there. If something doesn't feel right, it isn't. Exactly. That's why we have intuition, our gut instincts. Okay? King Lejeune said due diligence. Absolutely. So we have to be mindful of the way that we think. We have to question ourselves, and we have to ask ourselves sometimes, what is the best way for me to approach this? For example, if someone says something disparaging to you or says something you don't like or does something you don't like, you don't want to just go off on a whole rant or tangent without thinking. Because see, here's the problem with that. If you allow someone else to make you rise into anger, well, then you lose control of the situation right there. See, anyone that can just trigger you and they know it, and they can just say something to tick you off or do something that gets you all upset and throws you off, your positive balance that you've been on and throws you into a negative pitfall, that person is controlling you. And I refuse to let anyone control me or my emotions. You can't control my emotions. Only I will do that. I will not allow anyone to do that ever. That's why when I was telling you guys that on the other channel, how that person was trying to clown me and all that stuff, well, that doesn't bother me. You can clown me all you want. You see, because one thing about it is people clown you with the hopes of making you angry, with the hopes of making you upset, so you act out of character, you lash, make a fool of yourself. But you can't do that with the queen, because I'm always thinking about my thinking, and I'm always assessing situations, and I'm always careful of how I choose my words. Very careful of how I choose my words. And I don't allow anyone ever to dictate the narrative of my life. I don't allow anyone ever to be in control of my emotions. I'm always going to be in control of them. Another thing I don't do is I don't allow my emotions to control me. You see, you have to learn to rise above emotions. And when you can do that, beloveds, you will have risen into a higher way of thinking. Okay? You will have risen into a higher range of thinking. So Terry Hinn said, can't throw the queen off easily. Exactly. You see, and that's it. That's a good point, because what people do is, for example, if you're in a debate with someone, or you're questioning someone about something about themselves that they don't want to talk about, they'll often try to throw you off your game by hurling insults, cracking jokes, bringing up something that you did in the past, bringing up something that someone else did. They'll do anything in order to get the conversation off of them. And this is usually the tactic of a narcissist. Okay, cult leaders do this all the time. And their followers, like I said, don't even realize they're in a cult. Sometimes when you tell them that they're a cult, they don't believe you. They think we're not a cult. They're just hating. They're just mad. That's how they feel. Yes, absolutely. Deflecting and gaslighting, etc. Absolutely. Okay? All being said, and Mr. Hotel says, stay on topic, please. Yes, some people cannot stay on topic because they don't like the topic, especially when it's them and something that they did that they don't want to discuss. Some people don't want to take accountability. Okay? Some people do not want to take accountability. At the end of the day, we all have to take accountability, or we should at least want to. Okay? People who don't want to take accountability, well, you know what they do? They blame everybody else for the things that they do wrong. Blame everyone else for their problems. At some point, you are the problem. You may have problems. Someone else may have done something to make you get in a rut or whatever. You could say they created a problem for you, but at some point, you allowed them to do so. So you have to look at yourself and say, okay, I messed up. Clearly, I fed into the BS, and I'm a problem myself. So how do I avoid this? And that's when you have to start thinking about your thinking. So with that all being said, emotional intelligence, absolutely, honey, 69. So with that all being said, Timberland says accountability is the first step towards reconciliation and healing. Absolutely. Thank you, Juju, beloved. Okay. So with that all being said, I'm going to conclude the broadcast. But I hope that I have helped some of you to understand that it's very important to have a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. Remember that the fixed mindset can stay stagnant and not move forward. They can try to move, have goals that they set for themselves, but these goals will likely be hard to reach for the simple fact that they are not thinking about their thinking. Okay, what a way to bring in the new year. Thank you, Queen. You're absolutely welcome, beloved. Thank you for your kind words and your contribution to the channel. Peace, love, and blessings too. Okay, so with that, hey, Jason. So with that all being said, listen, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Remember to have a growth mindset, that you have to be able to think about your own frames of thought so that you can move into higher levels of thinking, raise your levels of consciousness, raise your vibrations, your frequency, and all of that. This is the channel for that. This is the spiritual zone. Okay, this is the spiritual zone. And here's what I want you all to do. Here's what I want you all to do. I want you all to give me suggestions of what we will call you all on this channel. What will we call you guys on this channel? Thank you, Cheryl said, wonderful broadcast, Queen. Thank you. Well, thank you, beloved. Okay, think of something. This was awesome, Queen. Thank you for your knowledge. You're welcome, Lillian, beloved. Now, I want you all to be thinking of what we're going to call you all on this channel. On the other channel, you're the royals, right? But since this is a spiritual channel, we're going to call ourselves something different. Okay, so with that all being said, listen, don't forget about the memberships that are available. Like I said, you'll have different perks with each level of membership. But those who have the higher memberships, they'll actually be given free spiritual classes monthly. They'll receive free ebooks and all of that. Now, for those who don't get the memberships, you'll be able to see the exclusive interviews and have the classes and the ebooks, but you'll have to pay for them. Those things are going to be for sale. Okay. And so with that all being said, the third eye movement. All right. I like it. Enlightened ones, insiders. These all are good. Okay. These are all good. The first eye, says Jason Hightower, golden ones. I love it. Okay. Spiritualities. All right. And so listen, I'm going to look over these and I'm going to have a name for you guys when I come back. I want to thank you all for your suggestions and I want to thank you all for tuning in. Listen, I love you all to life. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of this evening. I hope everyone got something out of this. And there's going to be much more information to come, okay? There's going to be much more information to come. Everyone, please subscribe to the channel. With that all being said, I'm going to conclude the broadcast. I know you all, each one teach one. That's how we grow and thrive. Do something productive, constructive, and never destructive. And remember to do your positive affirmations daily. This year, 2023, let's try to make this one of the best years of our lives. Okay? Let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can make this one of the best years of our lives. One of the most beneficial, high vibrational, spiritually in tune. And as we travel on our spiritual journey, let's see if we can become more in tune with the universe, with the Most High, with nature, and with those people that we surround ourselves with. If you have negative, pessimistic people, please shorten your time with them, okay? If it costs you your peace, then it's too expensive. With that all being said, Queen Dreamers, all right. So with that all being said, I love you all to life, okay? Remember, beloveds, to always keep the Most High first in your lives. Until next time, I will talk to you all again soon.